Alright, welcome back to Great Northern Cascades Division in N-Scale. Wanting to do a real quick end of year wrap up here. Haven't made as much progress as I really wanted since the last video at all. I've had a lot going on at work, a lot of health things going on, the health things driven by the work things really. But I have got hundreds and hundreds of holes drilled all the way through the bench work, and I now have the two main buses running through. So we've got the accessory bus, black and red. That'll be for doing things like signal lights, building lights, turnout motors. And then we've got the DCC bus, which is the blue and white that are kind of loosely twisted together. Whole bunch of spools that then kind of drop into here. What we'll have underneath the bottom here is where all of the DCC equipment will connect into, where the DC accessory bus will connect into. Each of the lines is no more than really 25 or 30 feet long. That's kind of a little bit more of an issue. It's not really an issue. That's a little bit more of a concern maybe on DCC. Once you get above about 30 feet potential for signal loss, signal interference, all the ends of the DCC lines will have terminators on anyway, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. It's not really that close to the DC bus either. It's really not going to be that big of a deal, but all of the buses are 14 gauge solid core. There's some debate back and forth on 12 gauge versus 14 gauge, solid core versus stranded. Somewhat down to preference. I find that the 14 gauge solid pulls just fine. I'm not going around a whole bunch of corners really. It's pretty much a bunch of straight runs. And so having that solid core gives it a little bit more rigidity, I think. And I find it a little bit easy to then tap into if I want to solder into as well. Things like that. So, like I say, most of the equipment's going to come in here. That's going to be coming in at the start of the year. Going with the Digitrax system. So if you follow me on Newcastle Central, that was NCE, but it was fairly basic. It was just the 2 amp starter edition with a 5 amp booster, and it really didn't need the 5 amp booster. This time going Digitrax, and mostly because they've got a lot more availability of equipment, much better documentation. It seems like it all just is designed to work together, whereas NCE, I don't want to say you cobble it together. Again, people have different preferences, and so I don't want to offend anyone that has NCE, but I just feel like for what I'm wanting to do and the size of the lab, Digitrax is worth a little bit of additional cost and investment. So it's going to be the Evolution Express duplex radio system, again, just kind of because of the size of the room. I wanted to make sure that the duplex radio was going to be enough. And that has a 5 amp booster that already comes included in it. Then there's going to be 2 additional boosters. They're going to be the Digitrax DB220s. They're actually dual 3, 5 or 8 amp boosters. So for N-Scale, I'll be configuring those as 5 amps, which means that each of those booster units actually puts out 2 basically power districts at 5 amps a piece. So in total across those 2 boosters, I actually have 4 5 amp power districts that I can put out, and they'll get powered by the Digitrax, I think it's the PS2012. It's a 20 amp power supply, so it's fairly beefy. But that gives me basically 5 amp power districts across the command station. That comes with that Evolution starter set, and then those additional 2 boosters. Be running those all off PM74, Digitrax PM74s, which basically then take one of those 5 amp power districts and then splits that out into up to 4 sub-districts or detection districts. I'm not sure exactly how Digitrax refer to it, but basically it means that we can have essentially one booster, 5 amp booster that would come out into a PM74. The PM74 then splits out into 4 different zones. And so what we could have, for example, is we can have coming up through the Cascade Tunnel can be on 1 detection zone. And so that means that we can figure out block detection. Is there a train in here? So do we need to have signal lights coming into the tunnels on either end to kind of control traffic? It also means that if there's a short, if a train derails, and really, where's a train going to derail? Where you can't get to it in a tunnel. If a train derails for whatever reason, then it's only going to short out that one particular section that comes off that PM74. If you try to put everything onto 1 power district, 1 short anywhere on the layout takes everything out. And if we look at the size of the layout again, just to kind of reset ourselves, there's kind of a lot going on here. So I've logically tried to break it out into what I think is going to work. I'm sure once I actually get into it, I'll change it around a little bit. But I think this is a good enough start. It's the right Digitrax equipment that I want to go with. The NCE will probably end up going for a shelf unit for a double O gauge shelf layout. So that's not going to go anywhere, but hopefully that'll be coming in at the start of the year and can get cracking on that. Also need to figure out lights. So at the moment we've got all of the overhead lights, which are okay for moving around, but need lights on each of the layers. Looking at LED lighting for that. Part of that is cost, part of that is power, part of that is heat. It's kind of all a combination of. There's still folks that believe fluorescent tubes are the best and they give the right temperature of lighting. That may be for them. I'm happy with LED lighting that I've seen, especially ones where you can control the color temperature. And as long as you don't get the cheapy ones off Amazon, eBay, Alibaba, AliExpress, places like that, then they seem to work out okay. So LED lighting is going to go in as well, so I need to figure out getting that in. And then I'm probably going to start putting in at least some of the backdrops, the skyboards, just to make sure that we have those in place. And so again, all the way around the layout has these buses ran through, and so as you can see, we come down, this is about 25 feet, and that's really the end of it. There's then going to be another section that will then run down. Over here we've got it split out into different segments too, also going into where a helix will be. So try to design it out the best that I can. We'll see, like I say, once we start putting that in early next year, hopefully. Then probably lighting, and then probably at least some initial backdrops and skyboards, just where it might be a little bit harder to put those in after the actual sub-road bed starts to go down. And then I've pretty much got a layout for the upper deck in place. That's probably why I'm going to start. Like I say, I haven't gotten as much done as I hoped this year, which sounds stupid since I didn't get into the house until the start of January and it was a completely unfinished basement. And so in a year, completely finished the basement, designed the layout roughly, got the bench work done. I've now got, wiring pulled through. So it has been a lot of progress, but I had hoped to have at least some trains running on the upper deck by now. But I didn't want to rush ahead and start doing that. Like I say, I wanted to make sure that I've got as much of the wiring in place as I can, lighting in place, backdrops in place, rather than just starting to slap track down and start to run trains, which has been really, really hard to avoid the temptation. But I think in the long run, it makes sense to slow it down. So I'm going to be heading back to England to visit some family over Christmas. So I'll maybe get some train videos and traveling around over there while the rail strikes, and then a bunch of rail maintenance on the East Coast Main Line isn't really going to help. But then hopefully you can come back, change your stuff at work, change your stuff with health, have a little bit more time, a little bit more energy to be able to come down here and start doing a bunch of stuff. So thanks for following along so far with the Great Northern Cascades division. Hopefully when we do end of year wrap up next year, things will look quite different. So let me know if you got any thoughts or comments about that Digitrax equipment, if there's any particular reason why I really shouldn't go that route, or if you have experience in using some of that equipment and some tips on getting that hooked up and starting to get that running. That would be great. And we'll be back again start of next year. Thanks. Bye.